Hey, Steve Mignani here with some really good junkyard news. If you're going to be anywhere near Sherman, Texas on March 24th and 25th, know that there's going to be an outdoor auction put on by DuncansAuctions.com of over 200 solid Texas parts vehicles. It's going to be Fords, GM, Mopar, lots of tractors, and even forklifts. These things all have to go. It's an online auction, but also an on-site auction. If you happen to be in Sherman, Texas, you can go and bid in person, or again, online, but all 200 vehicles have to go. Don't let them get crushed. To learn more about this auction, which happens on March 24th and 25th of 2023, check it out on DuncansAuctions.com. And keep in mind, if you're seeing this after March 24th or 25th, 2003, the auction's over with. But before then, make sure you check it out and save some of these cars. Don't let them go to the crusher. Hey, Steve Mignani here doing the junkyard crawl at Bernardston Auto Wrecking in Bernardston, Massachusetts, with perhaps the most fancy, gussied up FOX Mustang on the planet, the 1982 through 87 Lincoln Continental. Now, this is the 7th generation of the Continental right here, and it's the first one that actually had a possible V6 engine. Let's remember, of course, that 1971, this big, beautiful monster right here, a decade later, the world had changed. The OPEC oil crisis, the Clean Air Act, and a whole bunch of anti-performance sentiment crushed the auto industry, and essentially Uncle Sam said, hey, you guys have to make more fuel efficient cars. So basically, this is the first mid-size Lincoln ever. Now again, this is based on the FOX platform, believe it or not, 1978 Fairmont 79 up Mustang, different wheelbase, but again, as we open the hood, we'll see some very familiar stirrings on this. Now the beauty of the Continental, again here, only a 4-door, there was no 2 doors, no wagons, obviously, no convertibles. The Continental was strictly a 4-door like this one, and again, 1982 through 87, based on the FOX platform. The beauty is, of course, standard fare aluminum wheels, so it was kind of nice. The first Lincoln with rack and pinion steering, and something interesting to get lightweight. These were about 400 or 500 pounds lighter than the 1981 Continental. They went to exotic materials. Now the fenders were still steel. Right here, the magnet doesn't stick, or it does stick, but the hood, aluminum. Yes, aluminum hoods on these things. So let's have a peek under the hood and see what engine we're looking at. Okay. The standard engine on these things was the 302, the 5-liter. We see it right here with Ford Motorcraft variable Venturi carburetor. This is a weird little 2-barrel. Basically, it has a computer-controlled stepper motor that operates a pintle valve that creates the CFM flow that the engine needs for the most efficient operation from a lean and emissions standpoint. Again, 1982 was the only year for this stuff. They went to a throttle body fuel injection in 83. But again, when you see that variable Venturi, that's not a carburetor. It's kind of a hybrid electronic throttle body, if you will. But look at this, the aluminum air cleaner on this thing. Look at the corrosion. Look how this thing's basically just falling apart. But again, aluminum was used because it's lighter, and again, it's all about CAFE, corporate average fuel economy. I think the entire fleet had to add up to something like 21 miles per gallon for 1982. And if you didn't add up and average out to that, you paid a fine to Uncle Sammy. So that's what we have going on here. Now again, the aluminum hood on this thing, look at the underside. Look also here, the corrosion taking and oxidizing and turning this aluminum white. Look at that. It's crazy. And also the paint is delaminating. And of course today, since 2015, Ford F-Series pickups have been made with aluminum cabs and beds, so it can be done. But here it is in 1982, some of the first efforts to lighten the vehicle. And keep in mind that back in the 60s, aluminum meant a factory superstocker, max wedge or something like that. By the early 80s, of course, it meant low mass for better fuel efficiency. But if you know your FOX Mustangs and even your Fairmonts, you'll recognize these spring towers for the McPherson strut front suspension, and the ripples in the firewall. That's all FOX stuff right there. So yes, this is a unit construction Lincoln, whereas the full-size town car and of course the the Continental Mark series were also at body on frame at this point. So this is, again, Lincoln's first unit construction vehicle right here, first midsize. Now, one thing that came along a couple years after this, when I think around 1984 or 5, a BMW diesel was an option in Continental to help fight off the Cadillac Seville's diesel option. So again, Lincoln wanted to try and compete head-to-head with Cadillac Seville with this particular vehicle. Now, let's come around this side here and keep looking. And if we notice, it's a smaller car, but it has the classic Lincoln grille, still made out of metal. That's a nice thing. But look at this, how it's spring-loaded. Right there for pedestrian safety. Not that's going to save too many skulls, but there it is. That's on purpose. Kind of neat, kind of cool. Around this side, we can see again the aluminum wheels. These are not hubcaps. It's kind of nice. These were standard fare. There were wire wheels possible, but again, this is an aluminum wheel. We can see the inside structure. It's not a face. It's totally aluminum. And again, that was about reducing mass anywhere and everywhere. And it happened to look good too. Now, this one does have something cool. This is the $141 keyless entry right here. These little buttons, they used to be soft, pliable, sort of like a rubber. You push in your number 4268, you open the door. But again, $141 for this, the keyless entry. We look inside, we can see this one has the column shifted automatic, as they all did, although you could get a 4 and a 5-speed in a Mustang or even a Fairmont. During this time, these Lincolns were strictly automatics. But again, we look inside, we can see all the usual luxury. But again, this is smaller and narrower. This is a Fox. It's a Fairmont under the skin. The rear suspension on these things, same stuff, 4-link, had the 7.5-inch rear axle, 4-wheel disc brakes, kind of cool. Something you could not get on a Mustang or a Fairmont at this point in time, unless you're talking about the SVO a couple years in. But let's go around to the other side and look at the interior and other areas. But again, we're looking at a Fairmont with a Tuxedo. It's kind of what this is. Inside the front, again, very plush, standard power windows, power steering, air conditioning, all that good stuff baked in from the factory. Now, there's one area where Continental played follow the leader, and that comes down to the styling of the C-pillar, this puppy right here. You can see how this has an angle here. Well, that was first seen on Cadillac Seville. And let's get into that. And we can see this sort of angle. It's kind of weird. They call this the bustle-back right here, with this angle here sort of fights a little bit. So let's get to the bottom of that. Let's see, this is Motor Trend right here, February 1982. And we all know the drill. Canceled? What do you mean we're canceled? But inside we can see here a test of the Cadillac Seville, which was Continental's mortal enemy. But look at that. The Cadillac came along in 1980 with the Bustle. See how the tail has that sort of external trunk-looking thing? And in 1982, Lincoln says, yeah, we'll do that too. Of course, in the middle of this, 1980 or 81, the Chrysler Imperial came out with a similar styling touch. So it was all the rage at the time. But we look here on the next page, and we're talking here styling. It says, although Lincoln Mercury product planners are quick to point out that the Continental, complete with its unique bulging deck lid, was well on its way long before the Seville was unveiled in 1980. According to Everybody's market research, these somewhat controversial variations on the bustle-type rear end treatment, first introduced in the 30s by Hooper, coach in England on Rolls-Royces, impart a touch of elegance to the automobiles, at least in the minds of potential customers. But again, here's the Cadillac. Now, the big difference was Cadillac was front-wheel drive at this point in time. Whole different creature under the skin, whereas the Continental was strictly rear-wheel drive, kind of basic Fairmont. And once again, just like the Lincoln Continental Mark III fought with the Eldorado using Thunderbird underpinnings, while the Eldorado was kind of exotic, we're talking late 60s, early 70s, so too with this. This is basically Fox Fairmont stuff, and here we have the engine. Now here's the deal. For 1982, Lincoln Mercury offers a 3.8-liter V6 as an alternative engine choice in the new Continental. The 231 cubic inch Essex V6, named after its plant of origin, is also used in the Cougar, Granada, XR7, and Thunderbird. It says here, the EPA giving the V6 fuel economy rating of only 1 mile per gallon, greater than the 302. Now here's the thing, you know, Motor Trend never makes mistakes, but look at that, that's a typo. That, greater that, Should be then. Give an N. Give Motor Trend an N. But anyway, with that said, the 3.8 V6 was a pushrod V6. Kind of a crappy little engine. And again, only 1 mile per gallon better than the 5-liter V8, which was the standard engine. And the funny thing is, when you took the 3.8 V6, you didn't get a credit. It was a no-cost substitution. Anyway, now on the back, as we wrap this look up, the Continental, once again, 1940 through 48, the first appearance of the name. And of course, 56 and 57, the spare tire welts, if you will, this bump here was iconic. And of course, 1969 through 71, this effect right here was classic Continental stuff. And they baked it right into this thing right here, the 7th gen, again from 1982 through 87. But here's the funny thing, there's no spare tire under this. It's just effects. It's a visual thing that'll let you know that you're looking at a Continental and not a Seville, which otherwise you might be mistaken for by the design of everything else. But here we can see automatic overdrive, which of course tells us this has the C5, which is a 4-speed automatic right here with overdrive and top gear. Nice how it's not glued on very well, but again, the automatic overdrive, this transmission basically was there for better fuel economy. And again, 1982, all of Detroit was running scared under the CAFE corporate average fuel economy mandate. And, you know, meanwhile, the world was downsizing. Of course, now Lincoln makes an SUV with like 500 horsepower and, you know, weighs 6,000 pounds. So everything kind of comes full circle if you wait long enough. But that's the story of how the Ford Fairmont grew a Tuxedo and became a Continental in 1982. And this is the last rear-wheel drive Continental. For 1988, this went to a front-wheel drive platform. So if you want a rear-wheel drive Fox-based Continental, get an 82 through 87. Now, if you like this video, be sure to subscribe to the Steve Maggs YouTube channel. Give this a thumbs up, give it a like, tell your friends about it, share it, and also be sure to hit the bell, ring that bell, so you know when the next video comes out, which is tomorrow morning.